Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and a host of The Crisis Files. In each case file, we explore a real-world crisis and try to find solutions to help you. Alexa Score is a television host and former professional wakeboarder. She is also a cancer survivor. Having been diagnosed at 16 with a type of leukemia usually diagnosed in people 65 or older, Alexa used her life on the water to find a way to live. She's here for the case file I call Making Waves. Okay, first of all, when I hear you were diagnosed at 16 and you teach us to listen to our bodies, when did you know something was wrong?
I was a very active child, teenager, tennis, gymnastics, was involved with water sports, and midsummer I started having bone pain. That's what I called it. I said, my bones hurt.
Around the age of 15, 16?
Around the age of 16. Summer of 2006, it was like this achy feeling in my bones that felt like growing pains. If anyone's ever had growing pains. So when you're really young, usually I got it in my shins, but I had been done growing for many years by this point, so I knew something was wrong. Now, I grew up with my dad. It was just me and my dad, and he wasn't the most sympathetic guy. I learned at a young age not to really complain unless, I've got a bone sticking out or something like that. So I kind of kept it to myself for a long time, though I did mention it to family and friends. And as my junior year of high school started, it got progressively worse. My friends started noticing I'd be zoning out in school because the bone pain was bad. I mean, it was severe and it was all over my body. So my shoulders, my hips, my knees, and it started affecting my performance in tennis. And then as we started the gymnastics season, my gymnastics coaches knew for sure something was wrong. I was just a little too quiet, a little too well behaved. They're like, something's not right here. And I had told my dad a few times, but he was, let's wait it out. And some of the other people that I told, it was, well, you think it's just from tennis, wear and tear on your body or
Which seems strange when you're 16. That's a little too young for wear and tear.
Yeah, exactly. You have adults nowadays, I can see that maybe, but I just knew it wasn't that. My dad said, look, let's give it till Thanksgiving, and if your bones still hurt, I'll let you go to the doctor. Thanksgiving came, and I went to a primary care physician. I also am from a small town. No judgment, but maybe not the best medical care available there. I went to a primary care physician, and she said, I'm just going to send you to physical therapy. I walked out of there so devastated because I knew that wasn't it. And at the time, I didn't necessarily know how to advocate for myself, how to advocate in person, have the guts to stand up to an adult, especially one that's a doctor. It's hard to be like, you're wrong.
Yeah, the power structure is a little off.
Definitely. And this doctor was actually very kind. I just didn't know the importance of standing up for myself at that time. But I told her I wasn't going to physical therapy. And then I actually ended up a week later having an accident and requiring stitches. And when I went to get my stitches removed, my mom, who did not live with me, she lived 2 hours away, she actually came with me to get my stitches removed and was like, we're asking the ER doctor about your bone pain. I don't care what your dad says. I don't care what anyone else says. We're going to ask him. And even in that appointment, the emergency room doctor took my stitches out. I told him about this bone pain, and he told me I was having muscle spasms. And I started crying because I was devastated. I also knew it wasn't that. And my mom asked him to do a blood test, just a CBC. Can we please just do a blood panel? And he begrudgingly agreed. And then he called me at midnight.
Wow.
Because something was very, very wrong.
Something was very wrong.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to look back. I had actually told my best friend, Renee, I was like, feels like my bones are sick. That's what it feels like. My bones are sick. And the first thing that emergency room doctor told me the next day when I went back in is he said, your bones are sick. It was really interesting. And I was like, yeah.
So that's kind of to give those of us who don't have leukemia a visual or a visceral feeling for what that feels like.
Right.
It feels like your bones are sick. You were diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia. just shocking because you were 16, usually people in their 60s or older. What did life start to look like then after that? Because at least, thank goodness, you got a diagnosis. Finally, the right one.
Exactly. Obviously, I remember the moment they told me that I had leukemia, which is cancer of the blood and bone marrow. And while, there was a bit of shock, it was a sense of relief. The room goes still and you're kind of like, what's my first association with the word leukemia, I thought of pennies for patients and stuff that fundraisers we had did in middle school. But then I was just like, okay, so what do we do? There is a sense of relief knowing now we can at least try to progress, in some way and do whatever we have to do. But life changes really fast. It's a whirlwind. I was fortunate. Both of my parents were pharmacists, so they had extensive medical knowledge. They weren't doctors, but they at least were very informed and could understand, when the doctors were kind of explaining some of my options and that type of thing. They were able to help translate and guide that in a way. Yeah, your outlook changes, just timelines change for me because at the time they weren't sure how long I was going to live or what my life expectancy would be. I just started thinking shorter term. I was never
thinking like you're going to die tomorrow.
There were a couple nights where I was afraid to go to sleep because I wasn't sure if I was going to wake up. But in general, I just started thinking shorter term. What can I do today? How can I get through the next day, the next hour, the next minute? It gets very daunting if you start thinking about, well, how am I ever going to be a healthy kid again versus, okay, I just need to survive this next 15 minutes.
Right, let alone live to adulthood. A big reason why I wanted you to come on the Crisis Files is because you are such an example of resilience. But not only the resilience which we now can say, oh my gosh, such an amazing, resilient person, but every month, every year, you had to continue to be your own advocate. So how do you go from this chronic myeloid leukemia diagnosis at the age of 16, you're an athlete. How do you go from that to becoming a professional wakeboarder, which is, kind of a niche area?
Definitely. It was hard to imagine because shortly after I was diagnosed, I started what was a brand new, relatively experimental medication. A number of doctors told me I needed a bone marrow transplant to survive. That was kind of the only treatment at the time, or the mainstream treatment, which if you survive that procedure, changes your life in many ways. But I had the first doctor that I saw here at St. Paul Children's Hospital just happened to know of this new drug on the market. Again, my cancer was not a pediatric cancer, and I'm seeing pediatric doctors, so most of them aren't aware of what's out there to treat CML, my kind of leukemia. I just got very lucky to have this doctor who knew of this drug, and he said, look, I don't know if it'll work for you. If it works, I don't know how long, but he knew that things were changing in that space. And he said, I think if nothing else, it'll buy you some time from having to have that bone marrow transplant. And so that's what I did. I started that medication and I got incredibly sick. The medication was working, and that was part of the reason I got so sick, because my body was destroying the cancer cells, which were abundant in my body. I started spending 12, 14, 16 hours a day in bed. This very energetic, wild teenager. Now I can't tie my shoelaces. I remember not being able to open a granola bar wrapper, and I would try to go to school at least for an hour a day. I had a really good support system. People in town, other people's parents, my classmates would come pick me up or take me home from school because it would be whenever I woke up, I'd get a ride to school, which was probably 10:30 or 11, and then when I'd had enough, someone would bring me home.
It's amazing you got through high school, let alone doing what you're doing now.
It was really tough there at the beginning. Like I said, there were a couple nights when I felt scared to go to bed. I wasn't sure that I would wake up. I was just so exhausted and in so much pain. Taking OxyContin every day, the bone pain had actually gotten worse after I started this medication, so I was essentially immobile, just unable to move. But I, to make a long story short, stayed on this medication and started to regain my strength about 6 months later, and day by day, hour by hour, started to feel better. But it was really breaking things down. Again, it's laying in bed, not being able to sit up it's hard to imagine how am I ever going to follow my dream of becoming a professional wakeboarder. You have to think A to B versus A to Z because it's just too intimidating. It'll break your heart if you try to imagine going from A to Z because it seems impossible. But I decided that I was going to graduate high school early and move to Orlando, Florida, which is the hub for water sports and wakeboarding. At that time, it was just to be on the water because we didn't know how long I was going to live. We didn't know if I was going to need a bone marrow transplant. So it was like, I just want to wakeboard. I don't know what that looks like long term, but I just want to be on the water year round. And so I moved to Orlando when I was 17. My older sister moved with me. We couch surfed. We packed the car up and we drove down there and hardly knew where we were going to live. So it was an adventure for sure.
What a risk taker also, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's resilience and then there's risk. So everything that you did, I mean, just staying alive was a risk. Not fighting it was a risk. And then here you up and moved to Orlando at 17.
My dad's a conservative guy, not a risk taker. And I just, since I was really young, my mom's like, you would ride your trike off the deck, like on purpose. And we try, you'd be jumping off the roof. You'd be doing all this crazy stuff. Like we couldn't stop you. And then we just stopped trying. It was a struggle, really, to stop thinking about that safe long-term plan and just start thinking, well, I've got to take a little bit of risk. And it was always a responsible risk. I was never going to put anyone in harm's way or, jeopardize my future. But yeah, moved to Orlando, Florida, and then just ended up continuing to feel good. It was kind of just one foot in front of the other. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay, while I'm here, I'm feeling good. I'll go to college here. I'll keep pursuing this wakeboarding thing. And by the age of 21, on my 21st birthday, I competed in my first pro contest. There were small setbacks and failures within that time period. I gave up on wakeboarding for a little bit and didn't wakeboard for a full year because I
went and got your finance degree.
Yeah, I went and got my finance degree.
Just, a little lazing off of things.
Yeah. I was still doing other water sports, but I had just kind of gotten frustrated with wakeboarding. So even living with cancer and having this risk-taking or live every day to the fullest mentality, there are still trials and tribulations within that. That doesn't make everything perfect. Every day you don't wake up, live it like it could be your last. That's part of it because it's true, but it doesn't make the societal problems go away. The other pressures that you feel, it doesn't change those things. So it's kind of this ongoing crisis. It's like managing the crisis every single day. And
your daily health crisis.
Right.
What has that daily health crisis taught you? Because you did go on to have a successful professional wakeboarding career. You competed in Alaska, France, Philippines, just to name 3 of the many places. But this was always there. It was this invisible sister that was in your body.
Well, that can be one of the harder things about this disease, too, is that people can't see it. I share my story now in hopes of inspiring other people and perhaps giving them strength if they're going through a similar situation, but I don't look sick. People don't see the bills coming in. People don't see me going to the doctor every other week for various reasons. So it can be hard in that sense. One thing that I learned early on was that being proud of yourself, a sense of inner pride, will beat any sympathy, any type of attention from an outward source. I didn't tell people that I had leukemia. When I moved to Orlando, I didn't tell anyone for a number of years. And because I didn't want to be the cancer girl, I wanted to be Alexa. And so I had to develop this sense of pride in myself. Like, maybe no one knows how hard this is for me. Maybe no one knows how challenging it is every single day, but I know. And that's all that matters. And so you don't need to be posting about it on Instagram every day. And, some people do feel a need for kind of that sympathy or that victim mentality, but nothing can replace being proud of yourself. That was something that I learned early on. And that's something that is helpful every single day because I'm still managing a life with cancer. I was at my oncologist yesterday.
And what have they told you?
The landscape for my leukemia changes. It changes every year. I can remember when I think I was probably 27, the first time that they told me, oh, you might actually live for a while.
Wow.
Like, hold on.
They were stunned too.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I haven't saved any retirement. Like, hold on a second. And that's almost, it's a crazy thing to not know how long you're going to live. And then doctors tell you, oh, you might live a decent, near normal life expectancy. Now, it's tough for me because they're basing that off of the average age of diagnosis is 65. So most people are living to 75 or whatever the average life expectancy is. Me being diagnosed at 16, that's a long time to be on this oral chemotherapy medication. That's a lot of wear and tear on the internal organs. So for me, it's managing kidney function, liver function, heart.
So you have to be very careful with food and what you take in addition to all those meds.
Yeah, I try to be very mindful. There is something to be said about having a sense of normalcy. I've never been really good at following rules.
That has been very evident.
So I can't put too many constraints on like my diet, but I'm definitely, active and mindful of all that for sure. It's managing it every single day. It's on the phone with the insurance company. It's doctor appointments. It's trying to get medication and being an independent or I work for myself. I'm self-employed, so that always adds another.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So you are this TV adventure host. You're out on the water. You're in boats. You're hiking, biking. I mean, you're doing it all. So did the professional wakeboarding kind of lead to this TV life?
It did. I was always interested in television, and I think I was afraid to admit it. I felt embarrassed to want to pursue a career in television. So even when I was wakeboarding, I had some opportunities in TV, but I was very timid. I was on television on Travel Channel and did a couple one-off things. And it wasn't until I was 26, 27, ready to get out of Orlando, just ready for a change, ready to change careers, when I said to myself, if I don't try TV now, I'm always going to regret it. And it felt like I was late to the game and didn't have many connections or experience, and I didn't. But I hustled and networked for 2 years, and, my experience with the wakeboarding and the TV stuff I had done through wakeboarding was definitely a catalyst for my career in television. But my first TV job was working for the Minnesota Vikings as their on-air talent there. It kind of all came full circle. I moved back to Minnesota, and that has snowballed into, me hosting multiple outdoors TV shows and doing stuff with X Games and all kinds of other things. But wakeboarding definitely set the stage for sure for my TV career.
Now, can anyone take up wakeboarding, or is it just something we kind of need to leave in our youth?
Well, now with the rise of wake surfing, which is a little different sport, but also behind the boat, with wake surfing, you're going 10 miles an hour, nice and slow. It's a very low impact sport, and that has gained a ton of popularity in the last 10 years because a 5-year-old can do it and an 80-year-old can do it. Low impact, low risk. You can enjoy the water with family and friends. Wakeboarding, higher risk for sure.
Higher risk.
Yeah. Wouldn't recommend
Don't
for
try it at
the
home
average
just
adult
yet.
Yes. Yes, but there's a water sport for everyone, for sure.
Yes, there is. Well, we will be sure, telling all crisis filers out there, we will be sure to put lots of Alexa videos on the Crisis Files YouTube channel. So go there to watch those videos in addition to sharing this episode with all your friends. What is that message you want to leave that young person or even older person out there who maybe they know inside a voice is telling them something, whether it's about a risk to take, their own health, or a goal that they have? What do you want them to know?
Trust your instincts. It's really hard to get lost in the mess of everyday life, whether that's what your parents are telling you or your family or friends, or maybe things that they're not telling you, but you feel pressure to do. So often, no one actually ever said you can't do that. We just feel like that's the message they're giving us. So I would say trust your instincts. I don't think you ever regret following a dream, but you will regret not doing it for sure.
Great advice. Thank you for the inspiration, Alexa. Catch more good vibes and amazing images of Alexa in action on Instagram at Alexa Score. Today's Crisis Brief is brought to you by Golf Public. Number 1, listen to your body, advocate for yourself, and ask questions. Number 2, we are actually capable of more than we sometimes think. The body is an incredible machine. Number 3, trust your instincts. You'll never regret following a dream. You may regret not even trying. Reputation issues can arise quickly and unexpectedly. Prepare and plan before a crisis strikes with Golf Public, an award-winning public relations and public affairs agency. Your best defense is a crisis-ready culture that helps you spot potential issues, act swiftly, and reflects your brand's values while building trust with your audiences. Learn more at golfpublic.com. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at The Crisis Files. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Check out our website, thecrisisfiles.com, to catch up on all case files in one easy spot. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.